This episode is all about impact. Impact on your community, impactful ways to elevate your studies, impact of awareness, and chemical engineering. How can you have impact? We're diving into this today.
It's really important to understand that chemistry and in general engineering is plays a really big role in chemical engineering, even though it might seem as it doesn't. Becoming a research assistant as an undergrad, important experience to have if you are really into.
Today's guest is from Argentina, yet she studies chemical engineering at Cornell in the United States. Lara has an impact on her community with the organizations she partakes in, such as Rising Leaders, where she has gone to Capitol Hill to advocate for Tourettes, as well as being in Society of Women Engineers. If you want to know how to get more involved during your studies or the realities of engineering, this is the episode for you. This is the Gen Z in STEM podcast. I'm your host, Maidrin, and I hope you're as excited as I am. Let's get to it. Hi, Lara.
Hi,
So you do chemical engineering and you study this at Cornell.
I do.
Can you tell us what chemical engineering is and what it consists of?
Yeah. So chemical engineering is a really broad field that is tailored around studying chemical processes in a large scale and manufacturing of different kinds of products that can vary from, for example, the chemicals industry, the pharmaceutical industry, energy industry, or even like daily products that we use every day. So like even Tide Pods or a lot of different things that we use every day are made by chemical engineers who design the processes that go into making them in the industry from the chemical side of things and even the like large scale sort of machine side of things. So it's a really broad field that involves processes in general.
Okay. And so I've had someone who was doing more like traditional like chemical science on the podcast. Could you maybe like tell us what's might be the differences between chemical engineering instead of just chemical science?
Definitely. So I would say that chemical science is mostly, as most of the science-based majors are research-based. So that means that it's mostly focused on discovering different aspects of molecules and different aspects of, I would say, like the materials that we use in manufacturing in the industries, while chemical engineering is, I would say, more focused in
Hmm.
the process itself after the materials have been manufactured to get it to the product that we're trying to make.
Hmm.
And it is more general in the sense that we can work even alongside chemists in the process of formulation to create those materials, and we can also work in the economics or like management part of the industry. So I would say it's a really broad major that is more focused towards the
Hmm.
production of different elements in industry.
So yeah, so you guys like have things related to like the process, designing more than just necessarily the theory. So you go even beyond that.
Yes, that would be the idea.
And also, so do something pretty cool where you're a research assistant, like currently. And so I wanted to ask you, what motivated you to like become one, and how has the experience maybe impacted your skills and overall perspective on your field?
So I would say what I personally do is really chemistry based. So I work, I would say, alongside chemists in studying the entropy nature of colloidal self assembly, where basically what we do is trying to model materials and trying to see what sort of patterns we can see, how they
Mhm.
arrange using simulations. They're called Monte Carlo simulations, and I write the scripts for that. So I do a lot of coding in my job, and I would say that it has really helped me see that chemical engineering is really broad, and you can do a lot of things that go from maybe tasks that would resemble more what a CS major would do or what a chemist would do. And this has really put into perspective what my goals are within my major. So, what I want to do specifically. So, I would say that becoming a research assistant as an undergrad is a really important experience to have if you are really into research and academia and everything, because it really helps you understand how you can apply those skills that you learn in the classroom every day in different fields. And you can always switch if you don't like it, so that's also cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. And you did talk about so some of the like technology and like the aspect of programming, maybe even CS in it. But so I want to talk a bit about like the relation of like technology. So what role does like technology, maybe such as programming and software, play in like chemical engineering and the work that you do in the lab?
Okay, so actually, technology plays a really big role in chemical engineering, even though it might seem as it doesn't, because it is a major that you maybe wouldn't expect to use as much technology as, for example, ECE, MECI, or CS itself, InfoSci. But actually, technology is really important in chemistry because it helps optimize processes in a way that is much more efficient and less time consuming than it would be to do it manually, which chemical engineers actually did, I would say 30 years ago, where we didn't have as many resources as we have. And personally, my experience is in technology, having broad studying chemical engineering, even being in my second year, we have used a lot of different languages. I would say Python, Julia are really useful. Sort of You can use Anaconda to and Jupyter notebooks to run calculations for you. I have used Mathematica to do physical chemistry because you cannot do those calculations manually. It is just impossible, I would say. So I would say that technology is really crucial in optimizing processes.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that's well quite universal in engineering. Like myself too, we use a lot of like programming, and for instance, it just saves us so much time. Like in a recent unit, we were doing something with like flooding and inundation and flood risk, and we used I think you've
Oh,
used this too, the Monte Carlo simulation for randomizing it. But if we didn't have a computer to do it, it was like thousands of trials. So with computer, it's like able to be done so much more efficiently than humans would ever do.
definitely.
Okay. So, um, yeah, so now I want to move on a bit to your involvement with associations and like the impact in the community that you've had, because aside from studying chemical engineering, you're involved in multiple associations in the community in general. So in high school, you were part of Women in STEM, and now you're part of Society of Women Engineers and Rising Leaders. For Women in STEM, you were a member and regional outreach director. So first, I want to ask you, could you maybe tell us a little about what Women in STEM like does and how you found it and got involved?
Sure. I'm actually really happy to talk about that because women in STEM was a really big part of my high school experience. So I'm really happy to share. And I would say that the mission of Women in STEM, I feel, is really important as it is an organization that sort of, I feel, is really global in a sense, that it involves the motivations of women in STEM everywhere. And in Argentina, particularly, I hadn't found an organization like that was local based. So when I started working with them, it was a really nice experience for me to be able to bring that to Argentina. And the global organization has the objective of furthering the experiences of high school girls that are interested in science and maybe don't have as much exposure to it as we would expect because of how female representation in STEM fields is still really low, despite the efforts that we have been making in the past and the progress that has been made in the last few decades. And particularly in my position, I was in charge of outreach. So my task was to reach out to many different schools. That's how I found you. That's how we met. And basically try to connect people as much as I could. And I would say on board different chapters. That was my main task.
Mhm. Yeah, no, and I quickly want to mention like the importance of your role because that is how we met. And in my community and in the school I was in, we hadn't thought about that. So it like created an opportunity, and it got a community involved and more women to like learn about many different topics. So it definitely is important because it wasn't there, and it created like a opportunity for it. But yeah. So like as you said, we were both we're both in women STEM. You as a director of outreach, and me mostly as a chapter like a chapter leader, if that's what we call it. But um, so we actually reached out to the current women in STEM members who are currently like high schoolers, and we asked them if they had like any questions for you. Um, and so let's see if you can respond a bit from your experience to the questions they had.
Okay, we'll see.
So one of them was from Hoi Trang, who was asking, so you're studying at university in the US, and she was asking about like jobs in STEM and internship opportunities. So maybe if you could comment on your experience in getting internships and any difficulties that could be associated with the process overall.
So I would say that the job market in chemie, particularly, which is the one that I have experience on, is a bit like I would say it is large, but it is hard to land a job. I would say nowadays, and that's really common for most of the different engineerings. I don't know the specifics of every major, but in chemie, it has been hard lately, and I would say it's even harder for internationals in a sense because not every industry will be willing to sponsor you and sort of take internationals because taking an international student for an internship means sort of compromising to in the future have to sponsor them because most industries want to have someone that they can hire after graduation. So in a sense it is harder for internationals, but there are plenty of opportunities, and as long as you network and you apply to many things and don't focus on one specific opportunity, because it's really hard to get a specific job that you want, I would say that you will add something.
Okay. Yeah. And no, yeah, I can definitely understand that too. Like on my perspective as like, for instance, being someone who's like not so I study in the Netherlands, and not being from the Netherlands does make it sometimes like even a language barrier, not necessarily for US, but here. So like you definitely have to like go a bit more beyond and like be a bit more open-minded about where you can go.
Right.
Yeah. So, next question was from Mishka, and she was saying, "Hi Laura. So, as a chemical and engineering student, she was wondering if you ever had trouble with male dominance in your classes and how it might affect your mindset as a woman in STEM."
I would say that particularly at Cornell, we're really lucky to have about a 50-50 split. At least in my class, we're about 50 chemical engineers, which is actually a really small class. It's typically more. Um, and we're about 50% women, so that's really good. But I would say that it is really common for us women to doubt ourselves when we're in STEM, and a lot of my friends and I have that problem where we start every time something goes wrong in our major in academics, we start thinking, oh, maybe we're not made for this, you know. And it's really hard, and I don't really
Yeah.
see that on my male friends, if that makes sense. Sort of like
Hmm.
because of how we were raised and how female representation in STEM is not as present. And that really makes a difference in our mindset. But I would say that thankfully Cornell has been pretty good in terms of ensuring representation and ensuring that everyone feels included. So that's really good.
And do you have any like tips for maybe moments of doubt or that you've experienced like in your major? What can someone maybe do, if anything?
Just it's really important to understand that chemistry and in general engineering is hard. We're not dumb. It's just that engineering is objectively hard, and we sometimes have to push through. You're not gonna be excellent at every single class that you're taking. Like that's basically impossible, I would say. But you're probably doing better than you think most of the time, or at least that has been true for my friends and I. We sometimes struggle in a class, and we're like, oh, we're gonna fail, and maybe we don't do excellent, but it's always okay, and it's always gonna be okay in the end if you put in the effort. So I would say just hold on, and like know that you can do it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like everyone is struggling, but some try to not show it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the questions were really relevant. So yeah, thank you for answering those. And also I think maybe something that can also help is like, for instance, the associations you do, like Society of Engineers and spaces where you promote and find community and other people who have gone through what you're going through. But so I'm going to go back to Society of Engineers and Rising Leaders, and they're both associations that create impact in the community around where you are. So for those, how did you get involved with them, and what do they bring to your life?
I would say that for the Society of Women Engineers, my main motivation to join initially was that I was looking for a community that was sort of like women in STEM. So a space where I like we could connect as women regarding our struggles in STEM and sort of build these initiatives in order to keep promoting STEM to maybe young girls or our peers every day, if that makes sense. So I would
Mhm.
say that that was my main reason to join initially, and I found that it was a really nice community. It was really inclusive, and we had a lot of like cool initiatives that I was able to participate in. We had a mentorship dinner that we planned with professors where we designed presentations. We had catering, so it was really nice to be able to be a part of that organizing, especially for a school-wide event because that's really large. And now this year we're working with a local library in promoting initiatives in STEM for high schoolers and elementary school kids. So it's really interesting
Mm.
because it allows me to sort of get involved in making kids sort of a part of the Cornell community in science, which sometimes is not as present, I would say, in high school. Even if you're in the Ithaca area and Cornell is really important, if kids don't have the access to science, they might not figure out that they want to study that, if that makes sense. So it's really important to bring that to the community.
And then what about for rising leaders?
So I found rising leaders actually when I was living in Argentina. So I have always really been interested in participating, but I really couldn't until I finally moved to the US. So
Hmm.
it is an organization where we work to improve the life quality of people with Tourette syndrome. I have Tourette syndrome myself, and I feel like the Rising Leaders program has enabled me to find other people who are also struggling with my condition and also learn a lot of strategies in order to both manage my own tics and be able to mentor kids, maybe teenagers who have tics and are struggling at school or in general with accepting the condition. So I would say that it was a really growing experience for me. It really helped me.
Okay, and actually, can you maybe explain for anyone listening who doesn't know what Tourette's is? And yeah, and your story with it.
Sure. So Tourette's is a neurological condition that causes involuntary movements or sounds that we call tics. So tics can be either complex or simple, and then can be motor, which is movement based, or vocal. It could be, for example, throat clearing. That's one of the tics that I have. It could be winking, another tic that I have. It comes in different, I would say, presentations. So not it doesn't show up in everyone in the same way. Some people can control it better, some people can't, and it's really important to raise awareness about that because I feel like media representation is really based around, for example, coprolalia, which is when people sort of say involuntary words. And that's a specific case of Tourette's that only affects about 10% of the total population with Tourette's. So it's really not as representative of Tourette's as the media makes us think that it is.
Yeah, and how does having Tourette's, does it like, have you experienced that had an impact on like your studies and like life?
I would say that it does affect me a lot when it comes to concentration. So, for example, for me, a trigger to my tics is having to focus or being in a moment of tension, if that makes sense. So, right before an exam or when I'm trying to, I have like little time and I need to really lock in when I'm doing a task. So, I would say that that definitely triggers my tics. But I have really, I feel, learned how to manage them through cognitive behavioral therapy and just trying to get more informed about the condition, which was really helpful for me in understanding my tics and sort of being able to know what works for me in terms of how I study, how I go about my everyday life, and how I react myself to my tics and the energy that I bring. Because obviously, if one is always annoyed at one's takes, it gets really hard to control them because it takes more power for controlling them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and a big thing that you just mentioned was like being aware of like having it, because so I remember you telling me that you did get diagnosed quite late in life, and being aware changed a lot of things. Like personally, I myself, I'm dyslexic, and I found out really late. I found out like last year, so when I was 18, that I was dyslexic, and being aware, like you said, like well, not the same thing. They're different, but they're both somewhat neurological conditions. Uh, helps like adapt to study and the way you approach life, because yeah, awareness is the first step. So something like rising leaders can maybe even let other people like know what they have and change their life in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
So I wanted to ask, so do you think there's a stigma with neurological conditions such as like Tourette's and dyslexia, and how they're viewed in general?
Yeah, I would say definitely. I feel like even though nowadays there is more representation, I would say for disabilities in general in the media or like every day, I would say that some people have misconceptions about Tourette's, and it might personally affect people, especially when it comes to, I would say, vulnerable people. So, for example, teenagers, kids, they suffer bullying at school because people don't really understand or bother to understand how tics work. So, yeah, definitely. I would say that people are always going to be afraid or like hateful towards the difference. So, it's really important that we make Tourette's information accessible for everyone, because that way we can ensure that people sort of understand how it works and can relate to their peers, because it's not okay to just let it go and just some people like undermine, I would say, bullying because they're kids, so they don't know what they're doing. And it is really annoying because I feel like that's when learning starts, when you're a kid. So it's really important that we are able to raise awareness to everyone. All sort of initiatives within raising leaders include kids, teenagers, and also the college level. So it's really important that we sort of have all of that covered, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely like having a safe like learning environment, because at the end it doesn't matter, like everyone just wants to learn, and in this it's like, for instance, whatever you're doing, even if it's STEM or something else, it's like creating an environment where everyone can just be who they are and learn. So
Definitely.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And it's really important that we ourselves are able to recognize our disability, understand it, and accept it, because I feel like it's really easy for us to get frustrated and say, "Oh, like why do I have this?" It's you know, but actually, I feel like if we understand our disability, we can not only raise awareness about it, but we can also understand ourselves better and how we can work with what we have, I would say, and sort of use our abilities to the best of our power, I would say. So there are some perks, I would say, that come with Tourette's or any other disability and sort of make us who we are. And that sort of perspective you don't get from not accepting your condition, if that makes sense. You only get that perspective from learning and accepting and being able to work with yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I give it like a tiny parallel, at least for like my experience with dyslexia. But like understanding and knowing is like the key. But I think also when it comes to dyslexia, it's a bit different because like my brain and people with dyslexia's brain are wired differently. And I think in general, there's like a misunderstanding on when dyslexia is, and it's like a taboo on all like neurological conditions and like even like dyslexia especially. So it's like understanding also personally for dyslexia, like the strengths and understanding how to like, study and make sure that like you use that to your advantage. Like my quote, I guess, in my family, it's like when I found out I had dyslexia, all my family was like, "Oh no, like you're dyslexic, like oh wow, like it must be really hard and stuff like that." And I was always saying like, "Well, no, I'm very glad, like I know, I'm aware." Because also it is actually an advantage in like an engineering field for me to be dyslexic because there's yes, I have to work harder. Yes, all the time I can be like tired when studying and stuff like that, but there are things that are an advantage, and like I shouldn't be ashamed of like being dyslexic. So yeah, like the key is awareness, but then also like applying what you can and like making the most of it. So yeah, definitely.
Definitely, I completely agree with that.
So, well, I want to say like thank you for coming and like sharing all this knowledge, and it's incredible all the things you do in terms of association and the impact you have in your community. So truly thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
First of all, Happy New Year's. Thank you for listening. If you liked the episode, share it with friends and family, and consider following us on whatever stream you listen to, it be YouTube, Spotify, etc. And stay tuned because this year we're bringing on guests that will provide insight you do not want to miss.